Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going back to the back to basics videos, this is actually just the second one, but I thought I would go ahead and jump right into eyeshadow, even though I've already done one video on it where I was showing you guys how to do eyeshadow using just one brush. It has many details and it's a very useful video, so you can check it out. I'll link it here or down below. But this one is also going to have a lot of nyama. It's going to be packed with info. First, let me start by saying I truly believe that when it comes to eyeshadow and makeup in general, and I think I've said this on my channel before, it's all about technique. Sometimes it really doesn't matter what products you're using or what tools you're using. If your technique is bogus, the outcome will be bogus. That's it. So you can have the most expensive eyeshadow and the most expensive makeup brushes out there, but you've not taken time to master the technique, and then your eyeshadow looks just don't look good, you know. So just keep that in mind as we go along this video. It's all about technique, because we're all different here. Each of us has a different budget, so we're not all going to be able to use Morphe or Huda Beauty or whatever. So whatever you can afford, just know you can make it work based on technique. Now I'm going to be sharing with you guys 3 steps, but before I get into these 3 steps, and my notes are right here, these 3 steps will eventually help you be able to build any makeup look out there that you want. Any, be it a smoky eye, be it whatever, basically. So, but before I get into that, maybe I should touch on the lid a little bit, because I'm going to be using the eyeshadow eyelid lingo. So maybe I should tell you guys a bit about it. So this right here is the brow bone. This bone here where the eyebrow is, it's the brow bone. And then just below the brow bone here, this area, it's like an area where nothing is really going on. This part is, I'm just gonna call it either below the brow bone or above the crease, and the crease is this one. You see where your socket, the eye socket goes in, and you can just try and do this with your finger, like where your eye ends, the crease, and it actually usually has some creases, so that's your crease. And then from the crease all the way to your lash line, that's your lid area. And then the lid, sometimes you'll hear me say the inner lid, the inner part of the lid. That just means this part right here, or you'll hear me or other people saying the outer V, which basically means this area right here, this one, this V. Okay, so now that you guys have caught you up on that, let's also talk about the brushes you're going to need. I'm going to make this as basic as possible, because after all, this is back to basics. I don't want to burden you with, oh, this brush, this brush, this brush, this brush. Basically, the brushes I'm talking about are brushes you can get anywhere. I mean, you can get in Du Bois, you can get at an expensive shop, you can get these brushes anywhere. They're very standard brushes. And the first one is, okay, actually I would recommend you get 2 fluffy brushes. I got mine on Kilimall for very cheap. You can get them on AliExpress, Alibaba. It's a standard eyeshadow fluffy brush. Anytime you see fluffy eyeshadow brush, it's just basically this. I don't know if you guys can see properly the shape and all, but it's a bit dense, and then its shape is like this, it has like a funnel shape, very standard. So for a basic eyeshadow look, or for any eyeshadow look you want to do, I would recommend that you get 2 brushes. One is for you to put the color onto your eye, and the second one is to blend out that shadow. But if you don't have 2 of them and you have one, or your pocket can only allow you to get one, although these brushes can be quite cheap, then I would say go with one and then keep cleaning it as you go along. So that's actually sometimes what I usually do. Like actually right now I have 2 tissues here, and it can be so easy to clean your one brush if that's all you have. I have a Mary Kay, what's this, oil-free eye makeup remover. So if you have an eye makeup remover, you just put some here, put the dirty brush in there, and then after that you clean it on this. So that can be very easy. You can use one brush, but I'd recommend two. One for putting the shadow, one for blending. And then after that is a flat eyeshadow brush. This is it's just flat, basically. It's just flat. So this is for putting your eyeshadow on the lid. Flat brush, or sometimes you can also just use your finger and just use that to dab your shadow on the lid. If you're a beginner, I would recommend you start with your eyes, because you're still getting into it, you're still trying to master the technique. You might end up getting fallout, also depends on the eyeshadow you're using, but I would recommend you start with the eyes, so that even if there's fallout or you make any mistakes, it doesn't mess up your face makeup. Okay, so now we're going to get into the eyeshadow application itself. All these are just techniques that have helped me along the way, that I've picked from different places, and they actually do work. But I want you guys to keep two things in mind. One, what you blend extends. I think I've said this before. You don't need to put a lot of product, be it on your face or eyeshadow on your lids. You just need to put a little, and then when you blend it, it will extend. Just keep that in mind throughout, anytime you're applying eyeshadow. Then second is to build up. It's better to build up than to clean up. You'd rather take your time to put a little product on, blend that out, see if you need more, and then add, as opposed to just putting a lot at once, and then it's so hard to clean up. Okay, so yeah, what you blend extends, and it's better to build up than to clean up. Okay, so I'm going to be going in with my very well loved Morphe palette. You can follow this tutorial with whatever palette you have. That's the point of this series, Back to Basics. I don't want you to have to go out and buy something new. You can use whatever you have. In fact, the colors I have are going to be, the colors I'm going to use are going to be quite basic. So let's start now with the first step. Now we are officially on the 3 steps, and the first one has to do with a transition shade. So you remember the brow bone, you remember the crease. Do you remember the area in between, that area that just has nothing going on there, below the brow bone or above the crease area? We're going to put something called a transition shade in that area. Now, a transition shade is basically a matte. Note, it's a matte. You're not putting any shimmer here. You're putting a matte shade, and most of the time it's something that's earth toned, something that is a little bit deeper than your skin tone. Not too deep, maybe a shade deeper or so. Usually my go-to transition shade is a light brown, not lighter than me, but it's always a light brown. And what a transition shade does is it helps give you, you know, that gradient effect that you see people's eyeshadow looks with. This is it. This is where you get that gradient look from. So I'm going to go in with, let's see, I'm going to go in with this shade right here, this one. It's a nice deep brown, a little bit deeper than my skin tone. So like I said, we are using 2 brushes. One is to apply the product, and one is to blend out the product. Also, what you blend extends. Are we together? So I'm going to apply product just at the edge of that area. Okay, and then I'm going to take the brush for blending and blend that inwards. Don't go all the way, because sometimes I see some people's eyeshadows going all the way here. Just stop in an appropriate place, you know, like right where your tear duct is. Just stop at around that place. I'm just using back and forth motions to blend this transition shade of mine all the way up to the front. And it's actually moving. I hope you guys can see, because this is a very flesh toned color, but it's actually moving because what you blend extends. Okay, now I'm going in with the eyeshadow brush, you remember it, and I'm going to add more color. And then I'm going to take the blending one and just do the same thing. And I'm basically going to keep doing that until I've built up the transition shade to a pigment and amount that I want. By the way, guys, it's usually best to do both eyes at the same time instead of doing one eye, finishing, and then moving on to the next eye, because you can be able to match the two eyes. Because when you do one and finish, you might finish both and they don't match. So as you do this transition shade, you finish, you do this one, make sure they're matching, and then move on to the next step. So take your time on each of these steps that I'm going to say. So that's my transition shade on. It's quite light. I don't think you guys can even tell the difference. Maybe you can, but it's just a light shade. But I'm not saying you put like white there, just a light earth toned shade. Sometimes I also like to go in with an orange. So sometimes I'll go in with this. I know it looks quite heavy in the palette, but it's not that heavy when you put it as a transition shade. It's quite light. But for a beginner, I think I would say just stick to the browns, the earth toned browns. So pick a brown that's just a shade darker, or even just your skin tone, just to bring that gradient effect. Also, I forgot to mention, always tap off the excess. So when you pick up your product, tap off the excess. It will help you in terms of not getting like a patchy eyeshadow application, and it will also help you with fallout. Okay, now we are moving into the crease shade. So usually what you want to do with the crease is kind of like define it and bring it out. So you usually put a deeper warm shade in the crease. So it depends on the kind of look you're going for. Right now I'm going for something neutral. So when you're going for more neutral looks, just stick to like the browns and just those earth toned colors, but it definitely has to be deeper than your transition shade. So like now I used this as my transition shade, this one, and I can probably use this one right here. Is a deeper brown for my crease shade. It will just really define the crease, and I'm applying it in the same way that I applied that transition shade. Tap off, and then I am going to place the product at the end like that. And then I'm going to take the blending brush and just do the same thing we did for the transition shade. The same way I did with the transition shade is how I am blending my crease shade. So I'm going to go in and build that up. So I'm taking my shadow brush and just repeating the same thing, which I'll probably do maybe 2 more times after this for me to get the intensity I want. Okay, so now I'm quite happy with the intensity. So I'm going to use the blending brush to kind of blend the transition shade and the crease shade together, because you don't want like harsh lines. You don't want the transition shade and then the crease shade, each of them in their own, like with their own sharp lines. So you want to go like in between the two and make sure and marry them, basically make sure they are well blended. Okay, so now the third and final step. As you guys can see, it's really easy. It's all about the techniques, just those two things. What you blend extends, and it's better to build up than to clean up. Those two mottos, if you live by them, you will win when it comes to eyeshadow. Anyways, so lid shade. At this point, we've only used matte shades, guys. Do not, and I repeat, do not use shimmery shades in the crease or in that area for the transition shade, because you are not gonna look cute. Reserve those shimmery shades for the lid. Now this is the time to bring out those shimmery shades. Bring them, all of them, bring them all out. So usually, sometimes at this point, all the eyeshadows you've put, all the matte shadows have kind of gotten onto your lid area. So you might want to touch up a little bit with your concealer, just so that your shimmery shade or whatever shade you decide to go with in the lid can have something to stick to and can also come out, pigmented. So I've just put a little bit of concealer strictly just on the lid. So now at this point, you could either use just your finger to apply your lid shade, or you could use a flat brush like I talked about. You could also wet your brush to, like if you have a shimmery shade that's just not popping the way it is in the palette, you could spray your brush with some water or setting spray, dip it, and then pack the shade onto your lid, and it will instantly pop. So I'm going to go in with a shimmery shade. And I'm actually just going to use my finger, and I'm just going to pack that onto the lid. All the way from the inner corner up to the outer corner. But don't pass the crease, like that's the end. You're literally just applying this product onto your lid. Now sometimes the problem with a finger is that it can't be as precise as the brush, so you know, sometimes you might need to use a brush in case you feel like you're not precise enough. But in case you don't have one, this works too, because especially at the inner corner you can find yourself messing up a bit. So now you guys remember the blending brush we had. I'm just going to clean it a little bit on the tissue to remove any excess product. And then I'm going to go in and blend in between the lid shade and the crease shade, because again, remember, we don't want sharp lines. So we want a nice blended look, and we want each shadow to look like it's just gradually going into the next. So I'm going to blend in between the two. And this one you have to be careful, because you don't want your shimmery shade to go all the way up. So you have to really be precise and kind of just feather out that lid shade, because again, what you blend extends and you don't want this to extend. So really confine your blending to just that line in between. Unless you're going for like a cut crease look, in which case you don't have to do this blending part. That's literally those are the 3 steps. Now from these 3 steps, you can do any look you want. You can play around with any colors you want as your transition shade, as your crease shade, as long as you're using colors that will give you that gradient effect. And weird colors can give you that gradient effect. Like you can transition from purple to blue, or from blue to purple. So it's about having fun with it also. Now another additional step, like a bonus step, sometimes when you want to do, like, you know, the smoky eye where it's just smoking out like this from the side, you can use the crease shade on the outer V. You guys remember the outer V here? So what you do is the same shade you had put in the crease, you just put it in the outer V. In fact, we can go ahead and do it. So I'm taking my crease shade and I am putting a little bit like so in the outer V. And then I'm going to take my blending brush and make sure that that's well blended. And then now I can build the intensity. If your crease shade was a bit light, you can always go darker with like an even darker brown and just intensify that even more. So the last additional steps that is just being extra for you to really help your eyeshadow pop is putting a brow bone highlight on the brow bone. You see why it's called a brow bone highlight? Because it's the brow bone. And also highlighting the inner corner of your eye. Again, this is not at all a necessary step. You could just leave it at that. But highlighting, of course, just it pulls everything together. So let's do it. We're not gonna leave it to the sharp lines, guys. So take your blending brush and blend that out, and blend that brow bone highlight with your transition shade. You want everything to just mesh well together. And then we can do the inner corner as well. So now I'm going to just go ahead and put lashes and mascara and lashes just to like complete the look. You could also put your winged eyeliner at this point, or just a plain eyeliner also on the lower lash line. But we're basically done, guys. We're basically done. I really encourage you guys to try and master the technique. It will take practice for sure. You won't get it on the first try or the second try, but the key is to just keep trying, because you will get it. You will, and you'll be so happy when you do. Now also I feel like I have to mention that not all eyelids are made the same. Some people have what we call hooded lids, so they don't exactly have any lid space. And some of you guys have been asking me to do a tutorial on how to apply eyeshadow on hooded lids, and thanks to my experience as a makeup artist, of course, I picked up a few things and I worked on a few people who have hooded lids. So I'm going to be doing a video on eyeshadow for people who have hooded lids, so don't think I have left you out. I have not. At least these are just the overall basics. Now I'll get into it for people who have hooded lids. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please tell me your favorite eyeshadow hacks in the comments down below. I would love to hear. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not subscribed. You guys know every single YouTuber says these things after the video. You already know, so just do them, okay? Thank you guys for watching. Bye.